Good evening, and welcome to another episode of The Fire Caves, a Star Trek Deep Space Nine podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Perry.
And I'm your host, David. Tonight we're talking about What We Left Behind. The documentary of Deep Space Nine came out in 2018. Before we continue, however, you can find us on Facebook, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube as The Fire Caves, a Star Trek Deep Space Nine podcast.
That is correct. And as I say every single week, you should find us and follow us because we are great, we are awesome, we are a good time. And yes, we are talking about the infamous documentary that came out, what was that, 7, 8 years ago? Almost,
Seven.
enough time for it to be, celebrated in its own right. It's something that hasn't really been done for Star Trek. Before really, and it's interesting because it actually inspired them to do other um documentaries. Like they're currently working on one for Star Trek Voyager, as a matter of fact. So um it always seems to be the case a little bit with Deep Space Nine. They're kind of pioneering, groundbreaking something or another that others end up eventually copying. So, of course, we get to kind of see what they did with it. Now, this is not like a standard documentary at all. While they do interview cast and crew and talk about, different aspects of the show, there's also a running segment throughout the entire documentary where they talk about a proposed eighth season. If they were to bring the show back, what would that eighth season opener look like? So we're going to talk about that and also kind of give like perhaps our own projections based off of where they kind of leave things off as to what we would like to see if they were to ever bring the show back, and unfortunately have to discuss the reality of it never happening. So but basically, this is just going to be us kind of like talking about how we, after we watched the documentary, was there anything that we found, illuminating or not, interesting or not, so forth and so on, and just kind of going through it. And just to start that off, of course, David, now, as always, I always use you as the example because this is the first time that you've seen it. Now, this is only the second time I've ever watched the documentary. So take that for what it is. But
Mhm.
was there anything about the documentary that as you were watching it, that kind of stood out to you in relation to having just finished Deep Space Nine and getting this perspective from these actors and stuff so many years later?
Um, I guess because it gives you more of a behind the scenes look, that was definitely interesting. I was a little sad that Avery Brooks didn't ever seem to be interviewed amongst anyone else. Like he was always interviewed by himself. Like he
Mm,
had like some sort of like it's like for example, like his anything from his interviews don't appear until a good 20 plus minutes in. Like it's been going for a little bit
yeah.
before we actually get anything from him directly. And I just felt a little bummed out. I felt like, I mean, I wish he was
So
with the cast when he was talking to
yes,
them.
so there is a reason for that. There is a another thing that they did for the captains of the various franchises, where each captain they sat down and they got to pick their favorite episodes, and you can get the DVD collection of all these. And through that captain's selection, each captain is interviewed and they talk about their show and why they chose these particular episodes and so forth. When Avery Brooks did his, he was very detailed, not just in the discussing the episodes that he chose, but also like reasons why he chose it, the importance of the Cisco character. He really kind of was just very, again, very thorough in how he broke down his viewpoint of Cisco. So
Mhm.
then when it came time to do this, he was pretty much like, I've said all I really need to say for this. So, he just let them basically reuse that stuff from that. So that's another reason why his interviews in this documentary will seem a little bit disjointed, because it's actually older. It's older footage from another
Mm,
thing that he did a while back. Um,
gotcha.
and yes, as is noted, he is famously, very, very private, very reclusive individual. Not to mention the fact that he kind of retired from doing cast and crew stuff, conventions, all of that. He just kind of stepped away from doing a lot of those things for a while. So, uh,
Right.
and I think that now that he's like fully retired, I don't think he has any intention of like coming back to do any of this Star Trek stuff. So
Mm,
that's the reason why it's very sparse with
right.
Avery Brooks, which sucks because as the captain, of course, we do want to hear a lot from him, and
Right.
we don't. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, they talked about how apparently hairstyling was apparently very important to, a black man on television. We don't want him to look street with a goatee and shaved head. And so when he first shows up on screen, he's got a full head of hair but no facial hair. And then I guess season 3 is when they allowed him to look more like he did on the show he had done before. I forget the name of
Yes.
that. Or
Hawk.
was that Hawk?
The
Okay.
show was called Hawk. It was a spin-off of another show called Spencer for Hire, and he came in and eventually became like Spencer's partner, sidekick, whatever. But then the character was so popular that he got his own spin-off, which again was called Hawk. And in that,
Mhm.
yes, he was rocking the bald head and the goatee and everything else. And then, of course, he went into doing Deep Space Nine, which, as
Mhm.
you said, they had a very um, there's a lot of controversy about the look and the feel that they felt like Cisco should have,
Right.
and trying to get him to uh, fit that,
Right.
and it clashing so much with Avery Brooks's own personality and style, and
Mhm.
eventually they saw the error of their ways and let him be himself a bit more and
Right.
embody this character a bit more, which totally changed the pacing of the show and how you
Right.
viewed Cisco entirely.
Yeah. Um, I was gonna say that yeah, it makes sense that they shouldn't let him have facial hair, and then I thought Riker rocked that goatee or full on beard. I'm sorry, not
Beard.
even goatee, full on beard
Riker
since
went full
season
beard.
2. Yeah, babyface Riker suddenly aged up a bit when he allowed himself to grow some facial hair. Um, and yeah, Avery Brooks definitely feels more mature with his facial hair. Um, he's not as baby faced as Riker looks without his, but yeah. Anyway,
Yeah, they credit, and that's what's so funny. Is there's like a cult, conspiracy theory type deal that talks about Riker and his beard, and he was, again, famously baby faced in the first season. And then, yeah, he got to kind of grow up a bit, and he started that second season with a very strong, beard, and just really kind of relaunched the show to a certain degree. Like the saving
ladies,
grace, yes, the saving grace of Riker's beard really breathed new life into next gen.
yeah.
And then other characters were just not allowed to grow facial hair. Geordie LaForge, LeVar Burton was one who also had wanted to have facial hair, have a beard for a very long time. He
Hmm.
couldn't do it. Then there was like a couple episodes where they actually did allow him to like grow a beard. And then the whole backstory behind that is they didn't so much allow him
As
as
he
he
showed up
just
and said,
showed
"Deal
up
with it."
and was
Yeah,
like, right, got a beard, deal
yeah.
with it.
I
And they
think
were
I
like,
watched a YouTube short recently, and that was mentioned, and he
yeah,
just says like, I think Data says like, "You look different." He's just kind of like, "Yep, that's just the way it
right.
is now."
But then, like, yeah, the
Yeah.
powers that be were like, absolutely not. You will shave that off your face immediately. So, Jordy's beard was short lived, and then of course, Worf, his facial hair changed a lot. Some of that was his, some of that was
Oh yeah, good
prosthetic.
point.
So there was a lot of hair stuff. Hair has seems to be a problem that Star Trek has always had. Like every franchise has somebody who's got issues. I know in the original series, Spock had problems because of the eyebrows, and then like the hairline had to be cut a certain way. Obviously, we talked about everybody from Next Generation, Avery Brooks for Deep Space Nine. Avery Brooks and Dax were two that had hair issues. In Voyager, it's Captain Janeway. They changed her hairstyle so much in a very short time span. Even from like pilot to the very next episode, her hair is completely different. So,
Right.
and then it became like an ongoing nuisance thing. And even the actress who plays Janeway, Kate Mulgrew, has said that it was a nightmare for like 4 seasons before they were finally just like, look, just do something.
Right.
And
Pick
so yeah,
something and go. Yeah.
there is something about crafting the look of the captain and the persona they want them to project, and having a certain look. And I think that it really helped Avery Brooks more when they finally just were like, do you, man, just be yourself, like let's not fight about this, and
Right.
brought it in, and it
Right.
worked. So
Yeah. Yeah. It's curious because I know that in our military, the idea of having a shaved face is a common thing. So it's curious, how would the Federation approach something like that in a not just multicultural, but literally a bunch of alien cultures coming together? Like, how do you make a uniform look for your alien species that all work on the same sort of ships together? But I don't know. It's one of those things.
well
I guess you just kind of get used to.
Well, and I mean, our military has, obviously a part of their uniform dress code, the type of hair and, styling and everything else that you're allowed to have, and whatever else. And that is a code that has changed over the years. And as, certain styles and trends have come in and out of fashion. Um, Even in, we do the same thing in the corporate world. We both worked for a company that for a long time required us to be clean shaven as well. And then they ended up doing away with that practice. Thank goodness, because I it wasn't just a matter of preference, but my skin just you know couldn't handle the constant shaving all the
Mm,
time. It was a nightmare.
mm,
So I was so glad that they went away with that. And I think that that's kind of how it really should be. Like it's as long as the facial hair isn't dirty or distracting, or in any way interferes with your ability to present yourself in a professional manner for whatever it is you're doing, I don't see a problem with people having it. Now, if
sure.
you want to, you're dyeing it multi-patched colors so that you got a square, triangle, or whatever else, each one a different color, and it's different lengths and it's unkempt, and you got bits of food and whatever else in it, and you got bugs crawling up on the, okay, you need to address that right away. That's disgusting. But yeah, clean it up and keep it nice.
Right.
Yeah, I that actually reminds me. I shortly after my daughter was born, and I hadn't shaved in such a long time. And then for her, I shaved. I think you've seen the videos, parents doing this all the time. The dads shaving for the first time for their kids and stuff.
And the kids freak out and
Freak
oh
out,
my goodness,
right?
there's
Yeah,
daddy.
and it is. It's a nightmare. And she cried and just would just stare, and it was just so clear, that's what she was used to. So
Yeah.
even now, like, I mean, I don't shave it off very often, but every so often I'll, take it down, and I can
Mhm.
just catch her like glaring at me like, "What'd you do? Why'd you do that? Stop messing with your face."
Yeah.
So
Get out of my dad's body, you alien imposter. Yeah.
yeah. So were there any relationships that you were surprised by when it comes to what the actors were talking about in their interactions with each other through the documentary?
No, I guess I'm not too surprised they didn't talk about what Nana Visitor and Alexander Siddig's short-lived marriage. They got married and divorced within the space of the show itself, right?
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, they didn't even bring it up. I mean, fine. I guess it's not something you want to bring up 20 years later. But um,
Yeah,
yeah, I
they got married, had a kid, and I think like I don't even know when they like I think they got married in season 3 or 4, and then they were divorced, yeah, right by show's end.
right.
So, yeah, the show really, encompassed that. That's a heck of a, you know, what is that? Live free, fast and loose, playing it fast
Yeah,
and loose with marriage. I mean, got it, got it in just under the wire there. Got it started and done. Um, I was a little bit surprised they didn't mention that more. Talking about their interaction, meeting each other, falling in love with each other, deciding to get married, the kid, and all that stuff. All that while they're working these, crazy schedules and hectic timetables and scenes together and not and all that kind of stuff. Couldn't imagine.
right. Well, I'm just looking at their relationship history here on Wikipedia, and it says that they got married. They had a son born in September of '96, which was probably what, season
2 years. The show
4
started because the show started in '94, so '96 would have been season two.
or 3 at the earliest. But they got married in '97, divorced in 2001. So after the show ended, they got divorced shortly thereafter. It sounds like. Um, but yeah. Anyway, curious, curious stuff.
Well,
That's just I guess how it
don't
is. But
don't date your coworkers, even in the
oh
24th
gosh,
century.
yeah.
So don't do it.
um, However, the thing I would say that I thought was most interesting was that both Marco Limo and
Armin, Armin
Armin
Shimmerman.
Shimmerman. There we go. I knew I was saying it wrong. They both, I feel like they both embodied their characters in real life pretty well. Marco Limo was hilarious. I mean, the man's probably in his late 70s by this point, and he's talking about how he wanted the crew and the writers and the directors to tell him that he was doing a good job. And Ira, what's the
He wanted
he,
praise. He wanted accolades.
he wanted to
Hardcore.
praise the accolades. And what's the guy's name who's doing this? The showrunner Ira is Ira, right?
Ira Stephen
Yeah.
Bear.
And he's like, we kept bringing you back. That's proof that we liked you. Like you kept coming back. But I just loved that Marco Limo like had this like hole in his heart that needed to be filled with praise. I was like,
Just
bro,
like Gul Dukat, right? Right.
it was
Just
amazing.
like Gul Dukat.
Uh, and the way that they had one moment where Nana Visitor was saying like, no, I'm not gonna. I will never allow Kira to fall in love with Marco Limo, she said, and then they're like, nope, not Marco Limo. Oh, I meant Gold Ducat. Like, let me re-record that, and
Yeah,
then they
that's right.
re-recorded it. But they let her, they let the audience know that she had said Marco Limo the first time. That was hilarious. Totally right. Yeah, her character should never have fallen in love with him. His character was creepy because he was just so insistent on the fact. But the fact that like Marco Limo was like, yeah, that would have been a great storyline. It's like, bro, you and your character need like some space.
You both need therapy. You both need therapy. There's actually an extended interview with him, which if you watch I think you can find it on YouTube now, but I know that it was on the Blu-ray where he
Uh-huh.
talks about the fact that he really did get to a point where he wanted her. He wanted Nana. He just was obsessed to a certain point, and then her counter to that is that she did become aware of the fact that he was interested, and
Interested.
she was just like, "No way, man." It was
Right.
just like not happening at all, and it just it fed into their interactions a lot, that they had this extra that they could build off of, which great for convincing us of the right kind of chemistry for your characters, but terrible when you're done for the day and the makeup comes off and you're just ready to go home and you're exhausted and all of a sudden you look over and this dude is staring at you with those eyes and that smile and just being like, creeped out
Yeah.
100%. No wonder
Yeah.
she ended up with Bashir. It's probably out of fear for her life,
Yeah.
needed some
She
protection
needed
to
to
walk
make
to her
clear on
car.
set that she had a romantic interest already.
Right,
She wasn't
right.
interested.
She was already locked up.
She needed cover. Yeah.
Jeez.
Oh my goodness. Um, well, that's a good question. Real quickly, if she was pregnant with their child, which was written into the story. What
Mhm.
season is it that she is pregnant because she's supposedly having Keiko's child because of Bashir having magic? I mean, turns out that was all too real.
Oh,
Having somehow,
I think that the pregnancy starts in season 3 and culminates in season 4.
is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't remember
It
all
runs
the
for a
details.
good bit, and I'm pretty sure it's towards the end of season 4 that that she delivers the baby.
Right,
Yeah, yeah, I think that's right. End of season 4, because then we have the baby playing with Worf.
right.
Yeah, yeah, that's right.
Gotcha.
That's right, because Worf comes on also in season 4. And so they run through that whole thing, and then she gives birth to the baby towards the end of season 4. Yeah, that's right. That's right. And then Worf and Jadzia are seen watching the baby in the latter parts of season 5 and season 6. Yeah. That's yep. There we go. Figured it out. Timeline works. And then they kill Jadzia, so it's just like what's the point?
Right.
So well, since we're on subject of Jadzia, we might as well talk about that. We do get to see Terry Farrell give her um, part of the
Very brief
documentary. It's it is very
explanation.
brief. It is very brief. It was
It
very
definitely.
tentative.
It was like boop, like we touched it. Like it was such a sensitive subject where we can't like when she even starts getting emotional talking about it in the scene that she's talking about it. So I can imagine that it's just not something that anyone wants to like delve deep in on, at least not as a part of a documentary like this. But yeah, it was kind of boop, like
And
the
it's one of those things that really needed to be fully discussed because it's something that comes up a lot. And I also feel like because they don't discuss it or at least release it in full, it's another reason why Nicole DeBoer gets, kind of crapped,
yeah,
gets a lot of crap and stuff for stepping into the role of Dax
right,
when she did, because when you're left with such an unsatisfying end for such a popular character, and then on top of that, you're not given an explanation, and you're just,
right,
you're told to just accept this whatever that rolls in, it's distracting. It becomes a very distracting focal point, and no matter how much work the new person does, no matter how good they are, whatever, you're just constantly reminded that you
hmm
just don't know what happened here. And even in the documentary, it's kind of distracting because, like you said, they just kind of barely give us something, and we see Terry get, a bit emotional about it, and then it's over. We're gonna talk about that part of your time with Star Trek. We're gonna talk about the first same-sex kiss, and we're going to talk about being Trill coming from Curzon to Jadzia, and your interactions with Avery, and that kind of stuff. We're
right,
going to keep it light and keep it simple, and then move on.
right.
You know,
Yeah, the producer, like the head honcho guy, whose name I don't remember, but like the head of Paramount,
at the
who
time for Paramount and Deep Space Nine in particular, it was Rick Berman, and
no, I'm talking
Rick.
about the guy who's sitting in the on the sofa with like his sweater around him. Um, and those conversations, he's the one who says they didn't want Avery Brooks to look street. That's the one I'm talking about.
Oh, I don't remember that guy's name.
Yeah, but he was the head of
There's
Paramount, and he's like, well, Avery, Judd's or not Judd's, what is her name? The actress's name?
Terry Farrell.
Terry Farrell. Terry Farrell came to us and she was like, I feel like I could do more, is how he pitches it. Like, she wants to go off and do something else. But then Terry gets emotional by, like, again, they don't give it enough time to breathe to really kind of get into what's going on. It's like she felt like they just kind of killed her off, which it definitely feels, this how it feels like it went.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, I don't know. It's just,
Because that's
they,
not what she was asking for. Based upon some other things, because in recent years, Terry Farrell has been a little bit more vocal and forthcoming about her interactions and what she was looking for. And so, they again something they touched on was she did not want to be written out of the show. She just wanted to be dropped down from main cast to recurring cast. That
Right.
way it could free her up to go and do some other projects. In particular, there was a show that was coming out that she wanted to be on, and it was called Becker, that had Ted Danson in it.
Right.
She wanted that role. Um, if they had dropped her to recurring character, she would have been able to still do both, but they were like, no, you're not going to do that. And then she even says that one of the individuals told her something along the lines of, you should feel lucky that you've got a job at all. Without us, in a few months, you'd be working at Kmart, I think she says.
Yeah. Right.
Something very harsh,
Right.
and to a young woman who's still trying to make her bones in a, notoriously hard industry, the fact
Hmm.
that they would say something like that and then stop her from working on other projects is crazy. And what's so funny again about that is it was like they make it seem like she was breaking all these rules for making that request. But you know how many actors today cross work on shows?
Right.
Like it's almost commonplace now. Like no one bats an eye that an actor is on 3 or 4 shows in the same week,
Right.
you know?
Well, I mean, they could have done anything. They could have literally had a plot line where her character is abducted and she's just not visible on screen because her character is gone, and that gives Worf motivation for the season.
Right.
Worf's wife has been captured by the Dominion, and now we need to find
Or
out.
or maybe there's something even simpler, like they kind of walked us up to the point of, Worf and her talking about having a family and
Yeah.
everything else. They could have made it to where, okay, she wants to have a family, but Trills and Klingons, we don't know how that's going to work. So she needs to go back to the Trill home world for a couple of weeks
Right.
while they do a physiological study to see if it's even possible
Because she
for
already
for
had
this to
some
happen.
issues with her
Yeah,
symbiote
and
back
she'd
in
had
season 2 or whatever
right.
that
She's
was. Yeah.
already had she's already had some problems, some complications. Julian's a
She's
great
already been
doctor, but
separated from it at least once before, and
yeah,
then had to.
Julian's a
Yeah.
great doctor, but he doesn't know everything about Trill anatomy and physiology. Let
Right.
her go back home for a couple of weeks. She'll
And
be
all she
back.
would literally have to do is like be on screen, a little tiny screen with Worf, like once an episode, even.
Right. Things
Yeah.
are just giving them an update. Things are going well. Doctors say that it's promising. I'll be back in 2 weeks.
Right.
Just little things like that. And
Yeah.
even then, we can have off-screen mentions.
Right.
Cisco walks onto into ops, and he's just like, Worf, have you heard from your wife lately? And he's just like,
Right.
yes, she's due back on Tuesday.
Right.
Like there are so many ways they could have played this off and given her the ability to film the other show. And it was a CBS show, if I'm not mistaken. No, I think it was an NBC show. I was mistaken. It was
Oh.
an
Right.
NBC show, but
Okay.
it wasn't. It's not like it was that far away. It wasn't like like Star Trek is being filmed in California and her show was all the way in Dubai
Montreal.
or
Right.
something. Right? Eh, right around the
Well,
proverbial corner.
even then, I feel like I don't know. Maybe the budget wouldn't have handled it, but they could have found a way.
They
I
absolutely
feel.
could. And again, there are so many that do it now. So many cross filmed shows and
Well, and
people taking
I'm just
breaks
the
for
sort of
movies.
like call up NBC and like, hey, we'll owe you guys a favor if you'll like just work with us on her character. Like she wants to move on. She's got your show. We
We've
just
only
wanna.
got one season left.
Right. It's
There's
not.
not it's not that big of a deal.
Right.
She'll be
Yeah.
tied up with us for a few more months.
Right.
Can you push if it's that big of a deal, can you push the start date of your show a couple of months? Like, come on.
uh yeah, anything. But yeah, I guess that was one thing I was kind of sorry to see is like they didn't give us like they didn't give us the juicy details. I mean, that
No.
wasn't what the documentary was about. It was supposed to be a celebration of the show as opposed to a,
Well, I feel
here's
like
the tea, as the kids say these days.
but I feel like it got there. I feel like it definitely uh showed us a celebratory aspect of Deep Space Nine. The way that the actors really, talk about how they felt about the show in general. Sure, they gave us their own individual stories, but then they talked about the show in general. And one person that stands out to me is Armin Shimmerman, when he talks about how frustrated he was because he felt the show was every bit as good. That's what he says. It
Right.
was every bit as good, if not better, in some parts
Right.
than Next Generation. But the show never got the recognition in its heyday
It was the
that
middle
he.
child. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, how many times do they play that clip over and over again? Various actors saying, "Oh, I definitely felt like we were the middle child, we were the stepchild, we were the," like they all got it. They all were certainly feeling that way.
Right.
And Armin said again, in 25 years, people will come back to the show and see it for the greatness that it is. And he's almost spot on.
Right.
Like if you look at when the show ended and then kind of the renaissance, the rediscovery of it, it coincides perfectly with um, streaming and also with a new wave of sci-fi shows like um, Stargate Atlantis, Battlestar Galactica, Firefly, Farscape, all of these shows that all came out like around that time, this kind of rediscovery and then propelling forward some new ideas like the reimagined Battlestar Galactica. And then you watch those shows and you see how gritty and groundbreaking they are. And then you hear that, oh, there is a show that was like this 20 years ago.
Right.
Yeah, and now you're watching that and you're like, I had no idea.
Yeah. They talked about how Game of Thrones wouldn't be able to have its episodic storytelling like it does because a show earlier needed to break that ground, and Deep Space Nine was, if not the show, at least one of the shows that was doing
Yeah,
that, even in the face of pushback from the executives up top. To
who did
have
not want
season
it.
to have season two have a 3-part opener was a huge risk at the time.
Yeah, and they were like, and when they found out they were doing it, they were like, "What are you talking about?" And they're like, "Too late, already filmed." Guess
Yeah.
what, bus? Yeah, you weren't paying attention, and we've already paid everybody, so we got to air it. You
Yeah.
know,
And it's
yeah.
crazy because they're totally right about the risk it was. Because if you missed an episode, you were suddenly behind in a way that TNG you weren't. Um,
And you were not just behind, but sometimes you were completely lost.
yeah,
Episodes weren't always aired in sequence. Some places switched up, by a week. One week the show came on at Tuesday at 8 o'clock. The next week it was Thursday at 9 o'clock. And if
right,
you weren't aware of the scheduling and the schedule changed and everything else, by the time you caught the show again, you could be 4 or 5 episodes behind. So the
right,
fact they had 3 episodes that needed to be seen in a particular sequence to work, if you miss them, you might not pick the show up again until they're 10 episodes in.
right. Yeah, yeah. So it was a huge risk, and I can see how that was both a good thing, but it did probably cost them the audience that they. I mean, that TNG didn't, because they didn't do that kind of stuff. I mean, other than literally the season 3, season 4 crossover, the best of both worlds. I can't really think of many other episodes that. I mean, there were some two-parters. Don't get me
There
wrong,
were
but
there were some two-parters, but nothing like that. The to be continued between 3 and 4 of Next Generation was
and
huge.
they probably
It was
announced that way ahead of time. Like,
they They absolutely announced the premise of the episode, but they did not announce that it was going to be a two-parter. And it was a
and
big deal at the time when TNG did that two-parter.
right,
People freaked out about it. It was because also there were rumors going around that Patrick Stewart was not going to return to Next Generation. They were going to
this
kill his
was
character
that was
off.
going to be his way out the
That was
show.
going to be his exit, was that he was going to die in some kind of sacrifice or whatever for
Right,
the Enterprise, and it was going to continue on with Riker as captain.
right,
Um, yeah, so that was a big deal. And then for Deep Space Nine to come along and say, "Oh, that was a big deal," but hold my rack to Gino, I got one for you,
yeah,
and hit us with a
yeah,
three-parter. It was great.
yeah, yeah. and in season 2 of all places.
Right,
So
so early on in
yeah.
the show. So many things still unknown about the characters, the station, the area that they're in, and they just said, "Nah, screw it. We're gonna do this." And it was a hard-hitting three-parter. We got introduced to
Well, and
it.
as
Go ahead.
well, as I'm thinking about it, it's actually a four-parter because the finale of season 1 does lead into season 2, at least with the character of, at the time, Vedic Wynn. Her character was introduced at the end of season 1, and she's important for that three-part episode. I'm sorry, three-part episodes.
Mhm.
So yeah, it's almost like a four-parter in that sense. But
And we get
yeah.
introduced to and kind of fall in love with and then ultimately lose another great character in, Lee Nollis, who comes in and
Oh
does
right.
his thing, and he was just
Ah.
so in so well written for such a
Oh, I
short-lived
forgot how
character.
much I like that
Yeah,
character. Yeah.
and,
He was definitely the one guy that I was really bummed was gone once they killed him off.
yeah, yeah.
Ah, man.
He's another one. That was another
Gosh.
one of those situations where, again, they weren't sure if they were gonna make this character a permanent part of the show or not, and
Mhm.
ultimately, I think what won out was there was a lot of vested interest in the development of Kira, and the actor who played Lee Nullis had like some other stuff that he was doing, and it was like
Mm.
we couldn't nail down really a workable schedule for him.
Ah.
And yeah,
Because that is honestly a complaint I have about the show is that we don't have a lot of Bajoran characters, frankly, other than Kira and Kai Wynn occasionally. I mean, I can't even name another Bajoran character, frankly. I mean, who else is there that regularly appears? Okay, so there's Vedic Barile, but he dies off, and even then,
Kaiopaka
it's only
Kaiopaka dies. He's another one who made such a
yeah,
huge impact and then dies. So
yeah.
we had
They were like ready to
Kaiopaka, Vedic Bario, um, Lita. There
yeah,
is
yeah. Okay, Lita.
Minister Jaro, who is the
I was
leader
gonna
of the
say
coup.
yeah, Miniature Jaro was pretty cool, played by Frank Langella.
Hmm.
I actually part of the reason I like I'm thinking about him in particular is um, one of the podcasts I listened to brought up the fact that he played Dracula back when like his version of Dracula is the first time when Dracula became sexy, like the modern sexy vampire. The idea of being romanced or kind of enthralled by or charmed by Dracula, as opposed to Dracula being this ugly, awful, undead thing. But no, Dracula has a kind of charm or beauty even about him. And they played the clip of him as Dracula, and I could see it. Like, yeah, Frank Langella, man, he's got the charisma. Obviously, we know that. And but yeah, apparently the podcast I was listening to was talking about how like his version of Dracula brought about the more basically climaxed with Twilight and
Okay,
the
the
shiny,
the
shimmering
the
vampire in the
abilities of
woods.
the vampires to woo people all
Right.
traces
They're
back to
turning
Frank Langella. So he's the one I have to blame for that crazy
exactly.
nonsense.
Well,
Okay.
yeah, going from not only is the character sexy in like a positive, charming way, but also turning vampires from villains into more sympathetic characters. Even, um, why are they? Why would something like Twilight make a vampire a protagonist? Well, just like Deep Space Nine pioneered the episodic storytelling, the vampire as an interesting, seductive character was Frank Langella's version of Dracula. So,
Well,
yeah,
I will say that as we discussed on our episode when we talked about this particular three-parter, um, Frank Langella was also another character that they were considering making a recurring character and
yeah,
coming back. In fact, he was supposed to be kind of the bigger villain than Vedic Win, but
mm,
apparently there were some issues with Mr. Langella behind the scenes, not
mm,
necessarily on Star Trek, but with some other projects that he was, associated with, which caused him to drop out. And they then shifted the focus from a strictly political adversary to this political religious combination adversary, and
right.
focused all that into Kai Wynn, which I I don't even want to project. Like I enjoyed the way that Minister Jaro was kind of manipulating things behind the scenes, but it also made me feel kind of bad for him because we find out during this that, of course, the Cardassians are behind a lot of this infighting that's going on, and so it's like
Right,
you're being used, and I didn't like that aspect of it. So
right.
getting rid of him, but then still making there be this person who can be the focal point of the malice in Vedic, then later Kai Wynn,
Hmm.
I think was better, but
Sure.
you know,
Yeah, the Cardassian angle is you're right. It's too convenient
yeah.
a villain connection. I like too because in the pilot, as we rewatched the emissary episode, the pilot episode, Kira initially thinks that the temporary government, the current government's going to collapse any day. So it would make sense that Minister Jaro is just one of many politicians that are bringing about unfortunate chaos to the government system because
Mhm.
they're trying to reform something, and power hungry individuals would threaten to destroy whatever fragile progress they make. They don't need the Cardassians to be thrown into that conflict. It would just be natural that power dynamics would be up and problematic for those characters to deal with. But yeah, he was still a great character though. Um, yeah, man, God, but Lee Nollis, man, that was the one character that I was like, oh my gosh, just like Lieutenant Lieutenant Rowe. Oh my gosh,
Oh
if
yeah.
Lieutenant Rowe, Lee Nollis, Kira Nerys, I don't know, give us another male. I mean, Miniature Jaro, who knows? But give us like a quartet of like Bajoran characters. Not that Nana Visitors, Kira Nerys wasn't fine. I'm just saying, give us more Bajorans,
Yeah, no,
interesting Bajorans.
it makes sense. They moved. They're in Bajoran space. They're on a Bajoran owned station now. It's near the wormhole. We know the importance of that to the Bajoran people. More and more Bajorans wanting to come to the station as it's near their the celestial temple and being able to see it. It would make sense that there'd be at least a few more um, noteworthy officers or civilians
Right,
that we should get to know, and we don't.
right.
So, you know, now we've kind of gone off the wayside a little bit here talking about other characters, which is not necessarily a bad thing. But I want to return us again to the documentary and
Right.
discuss something that we hear about that bothered a lot of the DS9 regulars. And this was the addition of Worf to Deep Space Nine. A lot of them felt like him showing up was kind of a slap in the face, kind of like it's Paramount telling them like this is how we do things, and we're going to use Michael Dorn as this kind of example of what the show is going to be about and pacing and whatever else. And here he is, big as life, and
Right.
he's already a legendary character in and of his own right. So
Yeah.
what did you think of that second? Did you agree with them that that the way that Worf came in was threatening, or could have
I
been
can
seen as a threat,
see
or yeah,
I can see why they thought him as a threat, or why the producers thought they needed him to make the show have more oomph. But I'll just go back to what Michael Dorn himself says. He says in this documentary that the two best Klingon episodes were on Deep Space Nine. Like it's the Way of the Warrior and something else. I forget which one. But yeah, I mean
Sons of Moog, I think, is the other one.
there were so many great Klingon episodes on Deep Space Nine. Um, I feel like TNG set the stage. So don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that TNG failed, but Worf, Michael Dorn himself thinks that the best Klingon episodes were on Deep Space Nine. So they did him right in that sense. Um, I
Yeah,
mean, I remember the first couple episodes in the season had a trouble, like they'd already written those, so they had trouble like getting his character to fit in those first couple episodes of season 4 where he gets introduced, which isn't a problem. You it's just proof he didn't feel like they had to rewrite everything to make him work. make him fit in.
No,
They didn't
and
recenter everything around his character. As the Nana visitor says, she was worried that she'd be demoted from like second in command down to their secretary basically.
secretary, right?
Yeah,
But no, I've thought about it, and um, sorry, I dropped something here. Um, in no way am I trying to say that I'm necessarily an expert on all this, but I've thought about this a lot, especially since like when he makes that transition and everything else. I don't think it could have worked with any other character. Like, think of any other character coming from Next Generation. They all have very strong and informed character
yeah,
qualities. Even Worf does.
yeah.
But part of what works for Worf is he's already the fish out of water to a certain
Yes,
degree.
correct.
So him going to a place like Deep Space Nine that's already full of kind of these hodgepodge characters
Right.
makes more sense. You couldn't stick anyone else in there.
Yeah.
Picard certainly doesn't work because even if he seems out of place as a captain, as a
He would
person who is
immediately
naturally
draw everything
right.
to himself.
Right.
Right.
And they would fall in line. And if they didn't fall in line, he's well within his rights to replace them.
Right.
Riker, he
Similar
is
problem.
similar, but also Riker's style is more. I may seem a little bit awkward at first, but I have enough personality and charm that
Right.
I can turn this and work this to my advantage.
Right.
And I'm going to make friends quickly. And I'm going to be a person of influence in that regard. I may not necessarily be your leader, but you'll know right away I'm a cool guy. You're going to want to hang out with me.
Right.
You know, if
Right.
you can do this for all of them. Data doesn't care. Like Data fits because Data fits anywhere. Like
Right.
he's not going to be a problem.
Well, and
You know,
his character was always. I'm not going to say he was a crutch per se, because I'll put it this way: because he's so quick with literal data, Data's good with data. It meant that there were a lot of times on TNG where, like, just Picard says, "What's up?" Data, what's going on? And he just gives you a blurb of information. He data dumps all the information you need to get the episode going. And he very easily could have done that on this show, and that would have been a problem because that really would have been him kind of taking up that space. Like reproducing himself on this show.
he would have made both Dax and O'Brien irrelevant. If
Correct.
they had added Data, he would have
And
made them irrelevant.
Geordi would have made
Jordy is kind of the same.
O'Brien.
Yeah, Jordy's kind of the same problem. He would have
Right.
made them irrelevant. It would have been an interesting dynamic to see how he would have interacted with Dax a little bit.
Sure.
But again, like
Yeah.
he's a chief engineer. There's nothing there really for him
Right.
that he can't fix, he can't figure out. And then Deanna with her again psychological background, advanced interpersonal skills, everything
Yeah.
else. She's everyone's friend quickly,
Right.
very quickly.
Right. Yeah, all of
So
those characters would have been awkward fits. But you're right. Worf is already a fish out of water. His character also gets an update early on, going from what is it? He's the weapon specialist to
to the
command.
strategic, yeah, he goes into command. He becomes the strategic operations officer.
Right. He goes from a yellow shirt to a red shirt. So like his character grows on Deep Space Nine, where I
Yes.
don't feel like any of the characters. I mean, no other character really even had a character arc like Worf has.
No.
No other character has personal issues with their personal history like Worf has. I mean, Geordi, his eyes are, he doesn't have working eyes, so he has, that's always the question: is Geordi ever going to have real eyes or not? Is Data ever going to feel like a real human, ever have emotions? Like those are all questions that TNG already answered, already had those episodes about that. But Worf's continual development of integrating his Klingon and Federation selves and moving from a guy who takes orders to a guy who now gives them. Um, and yeah, I mean, would General Martok have been a character that would have fit on TNG? No, he would have been.
No.
It
You
wouldn't
know,
have worked for Martok to be on TNG like
I
that.
think we've talked about this before too, and there's only one character in my mind from Deep Space Nine. In the whole entire pantheon of Deep Space Nine characters that we see, there's only one that stands out to me that would fit on Next Gen, and that was Vedic Bario. He's just the kind of mild-mannered, milk toast,
Yeah,
very calming
I mean,
person
he's
that
basically a copy paste of Triana in some ways.
To a certain degree, yeah. I'm like,
Yeah,
and it always just bothered me that Kira was ever into him. It's like he doesn't fit you at
he
all,
never did.
just
And the
not
fact
at
that
all.
he was the one pining for her, not the other way around. I mean, you want your main characters to be the ones who have the personal issues that they're dealing with. Like, if she was attracted to him and he wasn't attracted to her because he's too religious, he's too into his whatever,
And
that would have
he
made more
sees her as
sense.
too violent, you
Well,
know.
yeah, something.
Yeah,
But the fact that they made her the one that was being pursued by him, he always came off as clingy by being that way. So,
yeah.
um, yeah,
It didn't work. It didn't work at all. But he would have definitely fit in on Next Generation for sure.
yeah,
So,
yeah. He would have been a
um,
regular. I mean, a regular character for sure. Yeah, he'd been. But like the main cast, I mean, the only main cast character who might have worked would be Jadzia because they didn't have a science officer in the same way that she's supposed to be on Deep Space Nine. But even then, Deep Space Nine had a
that's
hard
but
time.
even then, that's a bit of a stretch because yeah, they had a hard time using her as a dedicated science officer,
Right.
and on Next
Yes.
Generation, Data kind of filled that gap as operations officer.
Right. Yeah, I guess she could have been like the one who like Data's the one who can like look at information and sift through it, but like she's the one who maybe could have bring the like energy and like excitement to new discoveries in ways that other characters might not have been quite as like, Picard isn't gonna, be like, oh, that's an interesting pulsar. But maybe Jadzia would be like, oh, that pulsar is really strange. We need to go look at it. She could have been
Hmm.
this kind of force that was constantly butting heads with Picard or anybody else, but in command by being like, no, we need to go look at that thing, and like that being a problem because like, well, that's dangerous. We can't just rush at something curious. We got to make sure we're safe about it. Or yeah, I mean that type of character, a science officer would have fit, and so Jadzia could have been that, but yeah, I
Yeah.
can't see anyone else really doing it. Um, yeah.
So now before we wrap everything up, I want to spend a good amount of time talking about, of course, the proposed eighth season. So if you watch this documentary, which you can find it right now for free on YouTube,
Mhm.
so this again, it's called What We Left Behind. Go and watch it. But they, throughout the whole documentary, they are presenting this proposed eighth season, and really what they're focusing on is the story opener. So if you go through, you'll see that basically it's something has happened, and we see Captain Nog on an aging Defiant who has discovered some information and has sent out a call for help, basically, and having all of his old friends and colleagues rendezvous on Deep Space Nine. They all show up from their various corners of wherever it was they were, and just as his ship comes into view, it blows up. We also find out that Kira has stepped down from the Bajoran provisional military and has become a full-on Vedic herself. Or is she the Kai?
No, she's a Vedic,
Okay, she's a Vedic,
but she's
but
still in charge of the station.
she's
Yeah.
still in charge of the station, and apparently she's been meeting with some Dominion personnel in secret. We know that Odo is out there somewhere.
Hmm.
And we also see that as everyone comes back, Cisco returns as well. And he's got a mission. He can't just, catch up with his sons, and which apparently uh, the baby that Cassidy is pregnant with in this proposed eighth season is in Starfleet now and
Hmm.
is working as a science officer in these cramped, small quarters on the station with some other Starfleet officers, led by Miles's daughter, Molly.
Hmm. Hmm.
So lots of little tidbits of things going on there, and
Right.
of course, they don't really tell us much more than that because it's supposed to be like a teaser for an eighth season. But before we talk about what we think, like what we think would happen next, I should say, what do you think of their proposed season eight opener?
There are things I like and things that I was like, I don't know if I like that. Like, for example, I don't like them killing off Nog. Like, can you imagine being an actor who's been away from
Yeah,
this role, this beloved role you've had for 20 years? And they're like, hey, we want you back so we can kill immediately. Like, you're only going to be
You
on
know,
screen for less. You're
I'm
not even going to make it to the commercial break.
I was going
You
to
know what I'm
say
saying?
something about that. Oh, no, I know what you're saying. I was
Yeah.
going to say something about that, but then I realized it would be a huge spoiler for you, so I can't.
Oh.
But for those of you who watched Star Trek Picard, you know. So
I have no idea
so
what you
I'm
just
going to
missaid
say.
there.
So I'm going to say you'll have to watch Star Trek Picard, David, to get it. But
You're
for
saying
those
a
of us that
character
know,
dies in the first episode before the
for
commercial
those
break? Oh my
no,
god.
that's not necessarily what I'm saying, but I'm just saying, for those of us that have watched it, you know who I'm talking about and what
Wow.
happens. And I don't know about you all, but this was my reaction when it happened. And I just turned away. Didn't even want to watch the rest of it. It's
Gotcha.
like I cannot believe this is no, no.
Hmm. Okay.
So one day, if and when David gets there, we'll do an episode about it and we'll see his reaction
Right.
as well. You know what the funny thing is, again, for people who've been following along with us, you know what I'm talking about, and I think we already know what his reaction is going to be. That's hilarious to me. So I almost want you to
Now I
watch it
have
next,
to watch it. Yeah.
right? Because things that you said, I know you're going to have a very strong reaction to this when you get there.
Hmm.
So
Wow. Now I'm like, don't want to do it and like make myself mad. But okay. Well, anyway, point is, and like, let me put it this way: Nog had a great character arc in the show. Like,
mhm.
how can he deny this character who's had a great character arc? Killing him off is a mistake. Now, if you want to say the ship explodes and somehow he survives, or he's in a coma throughout the rest of the episode, which is why the mystery still happens, fine. Just don't kill him. You know, make it that Odo like somehow saved him at the last minute. That's Odo also shows up with Nog and like why are the two of them together? I don't know, something crazy. Um, in fact, I would also switch it up because it turns out the plot, as they reveal it, is that Section 31 wants to blow up the wormhole so that they can get the Bajorans to stop, worshiping the wormhole aliens, the prophets, so that they will finally join the Federation. And so they're trying to blow up the wormhole, and somehow Nog finds out about it, and that's what gets him shot. I would rather, instead of him coming out of the wormhole and like, I mean, I get why they were wanting to come out of it because it's reminds you of the wormhole and all that. I would instead send him toward the wormhole. Like he goes to intercept something,
Mhm.
and like he gets sucked into the wormhole, and he's gone. And all we know is that Nog left yelling about something and yelled at Kira as he left. Like Kira's like, I told you this would happen, and it like gets on his ship and he disappears. Like that's how I would do it. Don't kill the character off. Let him come back at the end of this episode or the next one, and then reveal what he found out. Let him do a
Okay.
dump of exposition. That's how I would have done it instead, because I don't want to kill the character off. I like the idea that Bashir has been sucked up into Section 31. I think what we would do there, if I were the writing the character, is that he entered just like he did originally, trying to be the good guy, like the good voice, the one who's trying to steer Section 31 in the right direction. And he's been sucked into it, and so he's compromised on some level. But then he also really has been at times the voice of reason and goodness, and so like he's partially redeemable in his complicity in Section 31. And
Mhm.
it's just this great complication of his character. It turns out he's been married to Ezri, and we think he's just a fun-loving doctor on whatever ship she's on. But it turns out that I don't think he should be the mastermind. Like we might think he was the mastermind at some times, but it turns out that Section
No.
31 is too segmented for them to ever be any one guy who's in
Yeah.
charge. So I think that would have been interesting. Have Garrick. I like the idea that the Jim Hadar were trying to find new beings to worship, and so they had joined the Bajorans as like we're going to worship the prophets, and that threatens the idea that now Bajor has an army
Mhm.
threatens the balance in the system. I don't think that Kira and the rest of the Bajorans were trying to quote unquote like be I don't think it would be revealed that they were trying to be, some sort of dominating force, like they were trying to like start conquering planets or anything. But maybe now they're intransigent in ways that Federation doesn't like, and you know it was
They
Picard's mission to Cisco to bring in the Bajorans, and they still haven't joined. It's almost been 30
all these
years,
years
and
later, they still haven't joined, and not only that, but they're now worshiping the captain that they sent to do this. They're worshiping him, and now they've got the remaining Jem'Hadar doing the same, and so they've
right,
set themselves up as having this, yeah, their own army, their own form of protection. They don't really need the Federation anymore. So it's a
right,
dangerous area they suddenly find themselves in. They're not the Federation, Starfleet is not sweeping in to save a bunch of beleaguered refugees anymore. You're now dealing with um, a quadrant power, you know,
right,
the way that now they would have had to deal with, like, say, the Romulans or the Klingons.
right,
The Bajorans suddenly find themselves with a lot of, literally a lot of muscle that they can maneuver and push around people with and make their own deals with. They don't really need the Federation anymore,
right.
you know. And one of the last things that anybody may remember about Cisco is he said that Bajor needed to stand alone. And I could see them using that as a way to kind of like twist the message because
Yeah,
he said
in
it at the beginning of the Dominion Wars and saying,
right,
like, "You consumed if you don't stand alone,"
right.
not as a rallying cry forever, but,
Yeah. Oh, that'd be a
typically,
great. That'd be
yeah,
great. That'd be like this
and
this cry that the Bajoran separatists want.
Bajor
Bajor
must
must
stand
stand
alone. They
alone.
use it as their rally cry because, as we see a lot of times, sometimes, with people and some religious things getting twisted, and people using religious rhetoric to justify doing terrible things and thinking that they're on the right path when in reality they're not. And that
Right.
could also be the trigger point for why Cisco comes back, because something that he said while being influenced by the prophets is being twisted for this, fanatical militaristic march, and he comes back to try to set things right. But he's suffering from um, memory degradation. So while comes back and he remembers that it was vitally important that he comes back and he's got a mission that he must accomplish, the longer it takes him, the more he forgets. So
Mhm.
he's not able to go directly to the source of whatever and be like, "Hey, I didn't say that. Quit twisting my words." Smack him around and then go back.
Right.
He just knows that it's important that he's here and that he goes to certain places at certain
Right.
times and does things. So that'd
By
be a
the
way to
way,
play that up.
talking about Cisco, I would totally have it be that he has periodically shown up in his son's lives on the regular.
Yeah.
Not this 20-year. Oh, I'm back. Sorry.
No,
I
I
no.
absolutely, maybe not to Jake, but
Right.
certainly to the younger one, because
Right.
Jake had lived with him, had enough experience with him and everything else. And I would absolutely love that like Jake and Joseph to
Right.
be sitting down and
And it
he's
would make
like
a great like
a great moment
hook,
for them to,
a
right.
great
He's
like
just like,
callback moment. Remember
yeah,
that
and he's
time when we were on Bayshore and Dad showed up and we had that one day with him, you know, um, and
Yeah,
you
he could
could
do
still.
that. He could do that for both. Yeah, actually, I would like that. That it turns out that they were just keeping it's the greatest Cisco family secret that he would just show up at certain intervals and he would spend the day with them, or
Right.
he would take them somewhere,
and
or
we can make it
yeah,
awkward. We can make it where like he's out of time, and so chronologically, the one that visits them is not chronologically the one that we visited last time. Like you know, the one we met last time was actually a future version, and like it was awkward, kind of talking to him because he didn't quite remember everything that we talked about last time or whatever. Like you could have some fun messing with like what
yeah.
would this mean to have
hmm
this man out of time coming back and interacting with you periodically. But yeah, keep going.
But no, I mean, like, all that would work for me. I would love that. And then I'd also like it if they could do it another way where he's only been appearing to Joseph, because Jake has gone on and he's a successful writer and has gotten married and is doing, his own thing over here. But
Right,
Joseph, who did not have the same benefit of Cisco in his life, seemingly,
right,
and then one night, when Jake comes back and he sees Joseph, and they're talking and everything, and Jake just says to him, "I really wish that you'd had an opportunity to grow up with Dad around
Right.
the way that I did." And Joseph just reveals to him, "What are you talking about?" It's like, "Dad was here all the time." And
Right.
he's like, "What?" And he was like, "Yeah, he would come to this, or he would do that, or I would see him
Right.
at this thing." And and then being like, "Did Cassidy know? And did your mom know?" And all this stuff. And he was like, "No, Dad told me I wasn't allowed to tell her." And that would fit in with the whole vision that Cassidy had, where the prophets told her that her path with Cisco would be full of sorrow. So
Right.
for her, she's been kind of suffering in silence, in
Right.
sorrow,
Right.
thinking that her son wasn't growing up knowing his father, and his father missing out on the development of her son,
Right.
of their son, not realizing that the whole time
Right.
Cisco was there,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. And we can even make it where Joseph is kind of obsessive about his dad, maybe. Like
Yeah.
he's a religious figure to the Bajorans, and he's kind of been a religious figure to his son because he pops up at weird moments and is
Hmm.
there to give advice, but their personal relationship is broken because it's not consistent. And so his relationship with Cisco
Yeah,
is
so it's not the typical father-son relationship. There is a extra level of reverence there
right.
that you don't typically see in that, and that's because
Like
of the
Jake
kind of
knew the man.
deification. Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly, there you go. Jake knew the man. Joseph knows the deity, I
Right.
guess,
Whatever
the
this
God
being is
figure.
now. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, literally the emissary. Like he's not even dad, he's the emissary even. Like, yeah. Damn. We should have
And
been in
just
that
and
writing
and
room.
and what and yeah, and like and just imagine that what that must have done to Joseph, like, because presumably they lived on Bajor at least for a little while, and they're having all these ceremonies for the emissary, and he sees his dad, his face, and all this stuff, and he sees the way the Bajorans treat his father, treat his mother, treat him,
Right.
and yeah, then all of a sudden this guy is appearing to him and is telling him all this stuff. Yeah, I can't imagine it being, oh, that's just dad.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's just dad. No, no big deal. Not at all,
Right.
and
Yeah.
then trying to reconcile that with what few stories Jake is willing to tell, because I would imagine Jake not wanting to talk about his father very much.
Yeah.
You
I
know,
feel like that character we saw, whatever the episode was, where like we jumped to the future,
the visitor,
as the visitor, like we see glimpses of that version of Jake. And
not
we're
quite as broken,
yes, he's
not
not
quite
quite
as
as broken.
defeated, but
We're
still,
yeah, we know that that could have been who he is if Cisco had left only 2 seasons earlier, the more broken version of him we saw would have existed. But the version of Jake we have, he's still married. Maybe he has his own family. Like he's like in this version when they pitched it, like he came off very much like that version of the character. Like he didn't want to go to Bajor when he's being asked to come. He's being all kind of reclusive. No, 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 no. He's some of that. We can see some of that, but no, he's still married. Maybe there's some tension in that relationship, and this is the kind of thing he needs to get out of his funk. This is going to be the redemption of his marriage, something like that. But not the depressed man, dying and regaling all of his regrets like that episode
yeah.
had. But yeah, I like the idea that I didn't recognize who Joseph was, and then they mentioned it, and it was a great little reveal, even for me watching them pitch it. Like, oh, here's that character that we didn't really ever
Oh,
know at all, and now here he is, an actual
when
character.
before they said who it was, when that drawing of the character came around, I immediately was like, "That's Joe. That's
Yeah,
Joseph Sisko." He
yeah.
looks just like the actor who played Joseph Sisko, the grandfather.
Oh, right. Yeah, yeah.
And so I was just like, "Yeah, okay." And so I just didn't realize that they had ever said that Cisco was having another son. For some reason, I thought that the kid would be a girl. I don't know where I got that from. I don't know why I felt that it would be a girl, but I just did. And, who knows? I mean, there's nothing, obviously, none of this is in any way considered canon or set in stone or whatever. So if they
Right.
were to ever do a proposed eighth season, they could very much make her Sarah Cisco instead
Sure.
of.
But
Joseph.
as we're pitching this, I want to think a little bit more. I think Joseph, there should be like, not only does he kind of deify his father, but the Bajorans have kind of treated him a little too reverentially as well, because he's the son of the
Yeah.
emissary, and so he has an egomaniacal issue at times where he is like, I'm the son of the emissary, like I'm that
No,
guy. No,
no,
no.
I want it to be the other way around. I want him to be like he hates the fact that they look at him
Okay, all
as
right.
almost the second coming. And but I don't want it to be like the quintessential trope of everybody is bowing at his feet. Meanwhile, he's rude and obnoxious to them. I
No,
want him to still treat them with respect and reverence, but internally, he hates it. And that's one of the reasons he ends up leaving Bajor and joining Starfleet. Because as far as Starfleet's concerned, you're just another human. We're not
yeah,
gonna do all
you're
this.
a widget
But
in the machine, baby.
right. But even still, even there's still some preferential treatment that he's given because as soon as they see his name, Cisco, and they remember Captain Cisco and all that stuff, it's like what your dad like saved the entire Alpha Quadrant.
Right,
Like he's a hero.
right.
You're by extension, it's like, and then that kind of eats him too because people come up to him and they want to ask him
What's your
questions.
dad like?
Right, and he's got nothing he can say to them. And
Right,
so, but again, he's like, I want him to not be rude about it, but
right,
to just let that be his very personal internal struggle.
right,
This having to play into the legend of the man, while internally he's like, I don't know what I'm supposed to do here because I never knew that guy.
right,
I never got to see this person that everybody is idolizing. And while I'm not going to besmirch his name because it's not his fault that he wasn't here for me,
right.
I still can't help but feel like this just really sucks.
Yeah,
And the only person he can really relate any of that to that even remotely understands is Jake. And
right,
Jake is still kind of like, I get what you're saying and I do sympathize, but at the same time, I can't go down this road with you because I know my dad would want me to live the best life I can. And if I do what you're asking,
right,
we're both going to be messed up. And
right,
I'm going to, it's like, and I could tell you right now, dad wouldn't want this for you. Like, so
right.
don't do it. Like, I would love for that to be their relationship, their dynamic is kind of like reinforcing for each other the life that they know Ben would have wanted for them.
Right.
And not there to be any kind of strife and this weird jealousy. Well, you got to grow up with dad, so like. I don't want any of that whatsoever. I want them to have a understanding, a strong bond because they are the Cisco sons. Because that's
Yeah,
one thing that Ben Cisco, we all agree, he was very much about the family bond and the family dynamic, and I don't want to see that tarnished at all,
yeah. If
at
they
all.
ever had disagreements, it's always in private.
Yes,
It's
they work it
strictly
out in
private.
private, right.
Right,
There's never a time where they're not a united front for other people to see.
right.
There's never as one storming off and Kira's looking like, oh, you know what? Like none of that. I don't want that at all. Like
Yeah,
they are together. Now they may disagree in private, but yeah,
yeah,
that's what I would like.
yeah. Um, moving on to Kira real quick. I think the idea of her becoming a Vedic is fine, but the idea that
Yeah.
she's a Vedic and in charge of the station, I feel like that's just, I don't know, like separation of church and state, right? Like how do the Bajorans handle it? Nah, they don't care. Like,
Well, so
I
and
mean,
that's the
maybe
thing because
that's,
like the Bajorans have a more intertwined political and religious
yeah. I was gonna
culture.
say for them, that's how it works, and that's
Yeah.
certainly what would bring the whole Section 31 doesn't like the how this is working plot
Right.
into things, but um, yeah, I thought it was an interesting and even appropriate, upgrade to her character after 20 years. But the idea that she was also still in charge of the station, I thought was curious. Like, for example, let's say she wasn't in charge of the station, but she was now in charge of whatever the temple on the station is. And so she's moved beyond her, you know, fighting past in that sense. It's been 20 years of peace, etc. Um, and so what would be interesting for her character over the course of the season is her being drawn out of her, place of peace and and tranquility back into a fight of some kind,
Mhm.
as opposed to that's just who she is. Um, that's how I would have done it. Is that, yes, she's moved on, but that's why this storyline is so interesting, is because her character is being forced to go to a place that she thought she'd finally moved on from, but life is cyclical sometimes, and you got to return to places that you've already been. Um, so yeah, that's the only change there for her character I'd make. Um,
To
yeah.
me, it made sense to make her the Vedic and in charge of Deep Space Nine because again, Bajor never joined the Federation. That is a Bajoran military installation, and um, the way the Bajoran military and religious cultural aspects of things are all intertwined. They're almost to the point where your rank in the Vedic assembly is equivalent to a rank in the military,
Hmm.
you know. And I could see her having gained enough of a following and enough influence that her requesting to be the commander of the station after the large Federation contingent pulls out makes sense. She's got the most experience with the station running it.
Hmm.
She also has the military background as well, and now she has the backing of her religious sect.
Yeah.
Why not? You know,
Hmm.
and like you said, I can see why this would be a problem for Section 31 because here's somebody who has been a terrorist, a soldier. She's been trained by the Bajoran militia. They took tactics from the Cardassians. She led the Cardassian resistance. She was trained by the Federation at one point. She's wore a Federation uniform.
For a time. Yeah.
She's been cross trained, cross platforms. She is the most ideal candidate to pull together all of the resources from Cardassia, Bajor, and now the Dominion.
That's
Kira
actually a great
without,
point.
yeah, Kira without, I don't know, maybe she didn't intend it, maybe not, but now she's a triple threat. She's got
Yeah.
three realms of influence that considered. And
Right.
right now she's on our side, but as we know, Section 31 doesn't wait for the problem to come to them. They're very proactive,
Yeah.
shall we say?
Well, I like the
Um,
idea too that like the Romulans might be kind of manipulating Section 31 a little bit, like because they've
mhm,
always been that type. That's who they are. They're always the manipulative. We're alone. We don't want to see power sources grow. We manipulate others. So I
mhm.
like the idea that
And
Section
certainly
thirty-one.
there's certainly been a power vacuum since the Obsidian Order
Right.
was destroyed, and a large part of the Tal Shiar. But Romulans have a weird way of kind of um, rebounding from
Hmm.
things.
Yeah.
And they do it so well in silence that by the time you recognize that's what's happened, it's almost too late. So I
Yeah.
could see that and like Section 31 being unknowingly influenced by Romulan agents. And
Right.
like I said before, almost right before it's too late, the realization is this has been coming from the Romulans all along. The
Right.
Romulans have been amping up Section 31 to come after Kira.
Right.
And then so now you have the two sides. So on the one, it's like, oh, this was all something that was orchestrated by the Romulans, but at the same time, they weren't entirely wrong.
Right.
And
No. True.
Kira
Yeah.
was doing some things that she
Yes.
shouldn't have been. So that's
Well, not
where
that
you're
she shouldn't have
making.
been, but she's been doing them in on behalf of Bajor, but because Bajor is not technically a part of the Federation, there's always those people who are like, well, then that means she's a threat. When, like,
Mhm.
We know Kira is not a threat. We know that's not who she is, but there are people who will whisper things and make that come about. I want a Vulcan character. I mean, this is literally two shows that have not had a Vulcan character. I feel like that's a huge
Yeah.
miss. Because I know that obviously Voyager has a Vulcan character, but I feel like this would be a great opportunity to introduce one. Um, don't know where we would introduce the character necessarily, but or what the role would be, but let's find a way to introduce a Vulcan character. I like the fact that Molly is back. Even the actress who played Molly had a bit in the documentary.
Mhm.
She had some purple lipstick on, but she looks fine. Looks like she could play her part still.
I mean, she can certainly play that part again. Hannah
Yeah,
Hate, I believe is her name. I don't know how old she is now.
right. While you're looking her up,
I am.
yeah, she as you said, she's the conversation with like Joseph. I Let's be very clear. Let's not throw her into some sort of romantic relationship with anybody right away. If we do want to give her or any other character a romantic relationship, um, like for example, I don't want her to be like hooking up with Joseph like from the get go or anything. Like no,
Well,
no,
no,
no, no, no.
Joseph would be too young. Because remember, Molly was already like,
10ish,
yeah, I was gonna say about 10
eight,
when
maybe
the
8 or
show
9.
ended. When the show
Yeah,
ended, and Joseph wasn't even born yet.
right. Okay, so she's
So,
too old for him. Okay, fine.
so she was
I just
born
feel
in
like that was
'88,
an.
so that would make her 37,
Mhm.
right? Yeah,
I
37.
just what I'm getting at is I just wouldn't want her character to be like too close with Joseph from the get go. I feel like that would have been a mistake.
No, and
It's
yeah, and
too
I
easy a
I
connection
think
to
so as
make, and
well.
that would be
And
wrong.
it would have made it would have made more sense if it was something like they grew up together or were around each other at certain points growing up. But
Right.
again, at the end of Deep Space Nine, the O'Briens go back to Earth.
Exactly.
Joseph
Exactly.
stays on. So, I mean, there would have been name recognition, sure. But I think beyond that, I don't think there would have been any need for
Right.
any deeper feelings or development between them. Now, once like in this promotion here, once they're back on the station and they're kind of traipsing through the halls in their literal father's footsteps, I could see maybe there being a ringing familiarity, the O'Briens and the Cisco's working together once again, that kind of
Yeah.
thing.
Right.
But I don't see it as her being like overly protective or whatever.
Sure.
Um, one quick note I just want to say about Hannah Hate. She did this is a long time ago because, like I said, she's 37 now. But she gives a story about how she did her first convention at 21. And she went to the convention, and Colm was there, Miles O'Brien. And
Uh-huh.
she walks up to him and she just says, "Hi, Daddy," and keeps and keeps going. And and he picks up from there and he was like, "It took me a moment to realize that was Molly. That was my Molly. Like that was her." So that just cracks me up that she just walks right up to him and he's just blown away with how much she's changed and stuff. And he's like, we'd kept in touch a little bit, but I mean,
Right.
again, she was 10 years old when the show ended.
Right.
And so it wasn't like he was going to follow her all of her life, but probably the dropped the proverbial postcard every so often,
Right.
hadn't seen each other because there was no reason for them to see each other. And then
Right.
boom, she pops up at a convention at 21 years old. And he's like, holy Christ. So,
Yeah.
but yeah.
That's crazy that I mean, gosh, she was a kid when she was playing the part. The idea of going to like, how does it? What do you remember playing a kid on a show like that? But I'm sure she could talk about all kinds of things. So
Oh, I mean, I'm sure she's got some her own interesting takes on it, and then I'm sure that also, they brought her around for like other stuff, and especially once the conventions started to get, really going and getting
Mhm.
bigger, she probably heard some more things, got to party with these guys a little bit more, doing stuff, and then yeah, it probably was a bit of a different story for her then. But I mean, what else are you supposed to do? So.
Right.
Well, I think that is gonna do it for us on this one. Coming up on almost an hour and 30 minutes. Yeah. Any final thoughts on the documentary part first?
Oh gosh. I guess we could still talk about plenty of other things, but yeah, it was fun to see the cast back together. Um, see a lot of the actors out of their costumes, and they talked about how awful wearing some of the costumes were. Going in and having to do 4 hours of makeup, and at one point someone had the wrong headwear or the wrong teeth. One of the Cork and Rom. So yeah, it's there's plenty of fun little details that they talk about. So yeah, anyone who's watched Deep Space Nine should definitely watch that and see what they have to say. Um, I feel like we hit the highlights in terms of like
Yeah, we
Mark
did.
Palimo. I just yeah. So yeah.
No, we
But can
did.
you
I would
imagine like
think so
having
for
that kind
sure.
of job of being a story writer where you just sit around for a couple days and pitch an episode over the
I
course of a
would
couple hours?
absolutely love that job. I
That's
would
just what
love
we did
that
just
job.
now. I mean, for crying out
I
loud.
mean, I used to do it all the time. Like there was when I was in college, I was in a actually a writing group, and that's kind of what we did. It was just like someone would throw up a brief prompt, and then we would just kind of like spitball ideas as to where we'd want it to go next. It would have it was a lot of fun, and I would love to have that kind of creative outlet again. Now, I will say that because of another executive producer on the show, Michael Pillar, you can actually write and send in, submit your writings for Star Trek, proposed episodes, prompts, whatever. He set up a whole, kind of back channel basically for you to do that. If you're interested at all, just go over to Paramount. .com. There's a whole link in the Star Trek section basically about how to send them submissions and also how to protect the submission that you send so that it can't be like stolen from you and everything else. And if they select what you write,
Get a
you
credit.
get credit for it.
Nice.
So, and I do know that there was at least one person in the writer's room for Star Trek Discovery who that's how he was selected. He wrote several um,
Pitches.
pitches, whatever you want to call them, several mock episodes for them. And while I don't think they actually used any of the episodes that he wrote, they liked what he wrote so much they brought him on as kind of a consultant, and then
Sure.
he became a full-time writer for the
Ah,
show.
that's the
So
way to do it right there.
yeah. So, I mean, the possibilities are there. You just got to be willing to kind of get your stuff together and get it done. And I do know that there are other shows that do that now that give you a limited access, limited way to get things to people to review. And again, if they use it, you get credit. If they don't use it, but something else comes of it, who knows? But at
Right.
least you can say you submitted something. So
While you're before we find, I gotta pitch more about this episode they were talking about.
we still can.
Like I gotta say this. Like, remember the episode where Cisco like leaves the door open to the prophets, the temple? Like they send a probe through and it allows communication from the two sides of the wormhole, and
Yes.
that is like somehow not keeping the door open. Like that's what like Raw or Nog is trying to protect or something. Like that's what he went to go protect. Remember that Cisco had left the door open to the prophets, and like that's what Section 31 was trying to do something with. And Section 31 thinks they can close a wormhole because wormholes are normally not, they're normally like artificial. They're not like the prophets wormhole is
It's
unique.
fake. It's unique because it's fake. It's
Well,
an
it's not
artificial
fake.
yeah, it's an
Well, it's
artificially created
Well,
wormhole,
well,
and
it's
it's
natural
stable.
in this. It's stable. It's natural to the prophets. Any other wormhole in existence that they might have ever invented, any sort of like, oh, we found wormholes here, and we found
Well,
ways to
because
forcibly
that's
close them.
like, keep
Those
in
are not.
mind yeah,
Those are not wormholes like the prophet wormhole, and so that's why the Section 31 plan fails or something. Like Nog gets blown up because he was too late, but it turns out they failed anyway. Like that's how I would. That's what I would have done. Is
okay.
Section 31 made an attempt, and Nog tried to save it or something, and he failed. Maybe he does succeed. I don't know. I'm just saying, like, there's so many things you could do with that idea that they pitched. Um, I'm excited. Like,
Yeah.
I want to go, like, get out a whiteboard and do like they did and start writing stuff. But anyway,
You know, for me, I like doing the darker, grittier thing. So
yeah,
for me, I would like for it to be something like Kira has been secretly meeting with the Dominion, and instead of it being a whole we're trying to get all the lost Jem'Hadar rounded up and sing Kumbaya. It's more, we know that the Dominion was in operation for several millennia in the Gamma Quadrant, and we know next to nothing about the Gamma Quadrant. So we're
Right.
going to take you guys and kind of create, we're going to reform the army and then create a foothold in the Gamma Quadrant. And so what's happened is on our side, on the Alpha Quadrant, the Bajorans are kind of like still, seemingly peaceful, docile, humdrum. But
Hmm.
on the other side, Kira is leading the charge and having them like take over places and stuff,
Ooh. So
and
she
just
is
like,
more of a villain now.
yeah, she's become
Mm.
more of this like religious despot to a certain degree, and
I'd tone it down a little bit. I'd say that she's not a religious despot. I think because she's legitimately a worshiper of the prophets, and bringing in the Jem'Hadar is they need someone to worship. That's kind of who they are, how they're built,
mhm,
and they've lost the founders as that. So like she's legitimately like, hey, worship the prophets, but it's a barrier. Like like we can't have the Dominion ever attack us again. And so she's building up like a barrier of Jem'Hadar soldiers around the other side of the wormhole, which is also a threat because that also means that technically they're just right outside of Bajor because the wormhole is, of course, a wormhole. And so that's where the worry is that she's trying to secretly keep an army, but she's like, no, this is meant for us to protect the whole Alpha Quadrant from the,
oh, wait, I got one. I got one.
okay, okay,
All
okay.
right. So the reason that Cisco comes back is because of the Iconians.
Which one of the Iconians?
The Iconian gateways that we saw them blow up one on next gen, and then the Jem'Hadar took over one temporarily, and
Right.
Cisco and Worf had to go and, um, you know, all none of the weapons worked, so they were all stabby on the planet.
That it's been a while since I've seen that episode, so I don't remember the details. But keep going, keep going.
Yeah, but so that's what happens. Remember, it's the episode where Cisco and everybody was on the Defiant. They come back and the station had been raided and partially blown up. And so Cisco and crew gets back on the Defiant to track them down. They run
Right,
into Wayoon
right,
on a Jem'Hadar ship that had also been attacked by these same renegade Jem'Hadar. And
right,
they're trying to repair an Iconian gateway. And if they are successful, there's going to be, a problem.
right,
And they then try to destroy the gateway and blow it up or whatever else. And it turns out that all these doings and especially the destroying of the gateways has been like a ripple effect, and it has awoken the Iconians. They're not dead. They've just been sleeping, and they're
right.
tired of their stuff getting blown up, and they're coming back to figure out what's going on, like who's
The
attacking
new
their
threat.
stuff,
Right.
right? And it turns out that the Iconians have existed in the deep dark depths of the Gamma Quadrant.
Mm.
And now that the founders have fallen and the Dominion is in tatters, they see this as the perfect opportunity to come back. And there have been whispers and murmurings, and this is something that Martok has been hearing, which is why he dispatches Worf to
Talk to
DS9
yeah.
to figure out what's going on because they know that Kira is in on it to some degree. And
Right.
everybody thinks that Kira is mounting an army, but then Kira reveals it's not an army, it's been an expeditionary force or whatever, an
Right.
investigative force, because we've been hearing the same things and we know it's coming from deep in the Gamma Quadrant, and
Right.
the Jem'Hadar, know that area of space more than anyone else. So why not use
Right.
them?
Right.
And it turns out that it's the Iconians,
Right.
and they're coming.
I think we can also. I like that idea. I think that's a fine villain, but I also think there should at times there's like should at least be one episode where there's someone trying to like take up the pieces of the Dominion and reform some sort of power structure, and they call themselves either the Dominion or something else. I think it'd be fun to call them the Dominion at least initially because we think, oh my gosh, they're back, and then it turns out no, it's not the Dominion. It's just someone pretending to be the Dominion.
You know who that is? That's perfect. You know who that is, though? It's Odo. Odo has gone back to the Great Link, what remains of it. He has influenced the changelings to be a bit more benevolent towards the solids. So they are now trying to also reform the
Okay,
Dominion. It's
okay.
under this new, we
Odo
are,
led.
yes, we are more accepting. And of course, that's, causing some problems there as well because
Now,
not everybody believes that.
just real quickly, do you care? Does that contradict the plot line from the video game, the Star Trek Online version of what happens to his character? Or do you want to keep that
No, I don't care about.
version?
I
You
don't
don't.
care about
Okay.
them.
Okay. All right. This is a new plot line.
Yeah, I
The
don't care
Star
about
Trek
them.
Online is a different universe. If we have to,
Yeah, let them figure out how to retcon themselves.
right. Exactly. Okay. So this is
Yeah.
how you would do it. Yeah. Dominion is back, but it's under Odo's leadership, and he is not a despot. He is trying to bring about something new and better. Got it. Got it. Got it. Got
Yes.
it. Got it.
Yes.
But the Jem'Har are kind of split because like they've lost their faith in the changelings because they lost this war that they were, supposed to be, whatever. I don't know. You can do all kinds of fun things with it. There's so many plot lines you could go with. Are the Cardassians now just like a bunch of broken, people? Are how much have they recovered? Are they bitter? Are they allies? You
Hmm.
know, are they? I would almost make them like Romulan kind of pawns. Like the Romulans have come in and
And it'd be interesting because the Romulans have been pretty hard hit with a lot of stuff lately. They lost the Tal Shiar. Um, have you seen the Star Trek Nemesis movie yet?
not yet. That's the next one, I
Okay,
think, right?
so watch that one because then there's some more things happen to the Romulans there, and uh, then there's the reboot Trek movies, which also do some things to the Romulans. So the Romulans have been through the ringer, and then Picard also has some stuff that happens to the Romulans as well. So it's like they may be just a little tired and might want to sit back and
Okay,
let some other people do something. They might enter into partnerships with other groups, but I don't see them as leading the charge on things anymore. Deeply fractured people here.
right.
So, well, okay, I think that will do it
Yeah,
for us this time. Um, yeah, catch us next week. We will finally be talking about the expanse and philosophy. This book here, we've been talking about it, hinting about it for a while. There's just so much, guys.
yeah,
Like as much as we would love to, just kind of get into it, there's a lot here that even with us, going through it, I still don't think we're going to be able to talk about every single subject.
yeah. There's
So,
23 chapters. You don't
yeah,
need to talk about every one.
we're also going to try to hit the highlights of as many as possible, but there are a couple that we feel particularly passionate about, so we're going to spend a good portion on those. So just be prepared for that. I hope that you have, if you did decide to pick this up and read it, that you have enjoyed it as much as we have. And if you haven't enjoyed it, you can still tune in and talk to us about it, because who knows, we might agree on those things that were awful or not. So um, David knows what I'm talking about, and when we get
Yeah,
to that part next week, it's
we're gonna
gonna
love
be
to hate on
hard.
that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's gonna be hard to shut up when we get to this particular chapter.
Oh gosh.
Yeah, but just stay tuned for all that, and we will just go from there. Again, you can catch us on all of the various streaming platforms. Of course, the most up to date episodes and things like that are available on YouTube. Please feel free to drop us a comment anytime you want. Let us know what you thought about the episode, anything that you would like us to cover in greater detail in the future. Who knows? We might go back through, check out all the comments, and do an episode that's just based off of things you want to talk about from the smattering of episodes there.
Yeah.
So that'd be fun.
Yeah.
Um, but that's it for us tonight, guys. Until next time, take care of yourselves.
Thanks, guys.